Wow, this deep dive, it's one I've been looking forward to for a while.
Oh,
This
yeah.
whole idea of how we're persuaded, how our attitudes are formed,
Right.
it's fascinating, isn't it? And we've got such a cool mix of stuff to unpack today.
Yeah.
You've given me some psychology concepts and even some straight up persuasive techniques to dig into.
Yeah, it's like a journey of self-discovery.
Yeah.
You know, we were going right to the core of who we are, how we see the world.
I love that. Okay, so let's start with the basics. What is the psychological self-concept?
Well, think of it as the core of your identity.
Hmm.
You know, it's all your thoughts and feelings about yourself. It's dynamic too. It's always evolving as you have new experiences.
So it's not just who we are right now, but also how we've come to see ourselves over time.
Exactly. And within this self-concept, you have these things called self-schemas.
Okay.
They're like mental templates we use to process information about ourselves.
Hmm.
So they influence how we perceive things, interpret things, and even remember things that relate to our
Like
self-concept.
a mental filing system.
Exactly like a mental shortcut to figure out who we are. And within that system, we find some really crucial elements.
Like what?
Well, like self-esteem, that's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
That's our overall evaluation of our worth, how much we like ourselves, really.
Okay.
And then there's self-concept consistency, which is our desire to maintain a stable and positive self-image.
So we're not just trying to figure out who we are, but we want to like who we are.
Exactly. We want to feel good about ourselves. And that's where things get really interesting because these elements have a huge impact on our behavior.
Yeah, how so?
They motivate us to act in ways that are consistent with how we see ourselves, even if we're not consciously aware of it.
So where do attitudes fit into all of this?
Well, attitudes are basically evaluations,
Mm,
judgments, or opinions we form about all sorts of things, people, places, objects, ideas, you name it.
gotcha.
And they're intricately connected to our self-concept because they stem from our experiences, things we've been taught, the people around us.
So our views on things would be influenced by who we think we are and where we fit in?
Exactly. And these attitudes act as guides for our thoughts, feelings, and actions, whether we're fully aware of them or not.
They color how we see the world.
Precisely.
Now, this is where I think things get really interesting. The social identity theory. Tell me about that.
Ah, yes. This theory dives into how our sense of self is so deeply intertwined with the groups we belong to. Essentially, we categorize ourselves and others into these various social groups.
Sure.
You've got the in-groups, the groups we identify with and feel a sense of belonging to,
Hmm?
and then you have the out-groups, those we see as different from us.
So, like, we're constantly drawing lines in the sand, even subconsciously, about who's in and who's out.
Yes, and this categorization has a huge impact on our self-concept and how we behave.
Mm.
We have a natural tendency to favor our in-groups. You know, we show bias towards those we see as sharing our social identity. It can be a good thing in some ways.
How so?
What could lead to social cohesion and cooperation, but of course there's a flip side.
Like-
This in-group favoritism can also fuel prejudice and discrimination against those we perceive as belonging to those outgroups.
Yeah, it just seems like such a powerful force, this need to belong and to see our group, our tribe as better.
It is social identity theory really highlights how much group membership can impact our self-esteem and our behavior. We get a sense of pride and validation from being part of our in-groups.
Right.
And that can boost our self-esteem and even motivate us to act in ways that benefit the group, even at the expense of others sometimes.
This all makes me think about how much we're influenced by just being around things a lot, even if we don't realize it. Have you ever heard of the mere exposure effect?
Ah, yes. It's a fascinating phenomenon.
Tell me more.
Essentially, the more we're exposed to something, the more we tend to like it.
Even if it's something we wouldn't normally be drawn to.
Exactly. The more we encounter something, even if it's just passively, the more familiar it becomes. And that familiarity breeds liking,
Mm-hmm.
even if we aren't consciously processing those exposures.
Our brains just find comfort in the familiar.
Exactly. Think about advertising. You know, companies spend millions of dollars just to get their logos and jingles in front of you as much as possible.
It's true.
That's the near exposure effect at work.
Wow.
It's subtly shaping your preferences without you even realizing it.
I guess that explains why that song I hated at first ended up being my favorite after hearing it a bunch of times.
Exactly.
So from our self-concept to the groups we belong to, and even just the things we're repeatedly exposed to, it seems like so much of who we are and what we believe is shaped by factors we might not even be aware of.
Absolutely. And this leads us to another really interesting concept called internalization.
Okay, let's talk about that, how we absorb those unwritten rules from the groups we're a part of.
So internalization is how we take in the beliefs, values, and norms of our social groups and make them a part of who we are. It's how we develop that sense of belonging and understand the rules of the game within those groups.
So it's like downloading a social playbook from the people around us?
Exactly. And this can lead to some really positive things like empathy, cooperation, and ethical behavior because we internalize those values.
But I imagine there's a potential downside too, right?
Well, yeah, what if the norms of our social groups are harmful or discriminatory internalization can lead us to conform to these norms, even if deep down they clash with our own personal values?
Yeah. That is kind of a scary thought. Like we can be influenced to act against our own better judgment.
It really highlights the power of social influence and how it can shape us in ways we don't even realize.
Have you ever done something that totally contradicted your beliefs? You know, that uncomfortable feeling like, what have I done?
Oh, yeah.
That's cognitive dissonance in action, right?
Exactly. Cognitive dissonance is that mental discomfort we feel when our thoughts, beliefs, or behaviors clash with each other.
Like our brain is sending up a red flag.
Yeah, like, hey, something's not right here.
So what do we do when we feel that dissonance?
Well, we're naturally motivated to reduce it because we crave that consistency. We want our inner world and outer actions to align. Sometimes that means changing our behavior to match our beliefs.
Yeah.
But other times we might actually change our beliefs to justify our actions.
Like we try to convince ourselves that what we did was okay, even if deep down we know it wasn't.
Exactly. And this drive to reduce dissonance, it's so powerful, can actually be used in persuasion tactics, which we'll dive into a little bit later.
All right. I'm already feeling like I need to take a break, process all this. We've gone from the foundation of our self-concept to the groups we identify with to the discomfort we feel when our actions don't match our beliefs. So what's next on this deep dive into the mind?
Well, now that we understand a little bit more about how our attitudes are formed, let's explore how those attitudes can be influenced, how we're persuaded to change our minds, and maybe even our behavior.
Okay, so we've established our attitudes are shaped by so many factors, right? Some we're aware of and some we're not.
Right.
Makes you wonder, though, if we're all so easily influenced, how can we use this knowledge for good?
That's a great question.
Can we leverage these insights to actually promote positive change?
Absolutely. Ethical persuasion is a powerful tool for making the world a better place.
Okay.
By understanding the principles of influence, we can advocate for causes we believe in, encourage helpful behaviors, inspire others to make a difference.
So it's not just about protecting ourselves from manipulation.
Right.
It's also about using these techniques responsibly
Exactly.
to create positive change, like turning the tables on those who might use persuasion for less than noble purposes.
Precisely. Ethical persuasion is about empowering individuals to make informed decisions that align with their values and benefit society as a whole.
I like that.
It's about open and honest communication, respecting diverse perspectives, and appealing to the best in people.
But where's the line between persuasion and manipulation?
All right.
How can we be sure we're not crossing that line?
That's the key question. Isn't it? Ethical persuasion always starts with respect.
Okay.
Respect for the autonomy and dignity of others. It's about being honest and transparent in our communication. Avoiding deceptive tactics, making sure people feel free to make their own choices without being pressured or coerced.
It sounds like a delicate balance.
It is.
Appealing to emotions and values,
Yeah.
while also providing accurate information and respecting individual freedom.
It is a balance, and it requires a lot of self-awareness.
For sure.
We have to be mindful of the power of influence and use it responsibly,
Right.
not to exploit or manipulate, but to empower and inspire.
Okay, so let's say I'm passionate about a cause.
Okay.
And I want to persuade others to join me. What are some practical tips
Yeah.
for crafting a message that's both effective and ethical?
Well, first and foremost, you need to establish your credibility.
Okay.
This is where ethos comes in.
Right.
People need to believe that you're knowledgeable, trustworthy, and genuinely care about the issue. That means presenting accurate information, being transparent about your motives.
It's about showing your audience that you're not just trying to win an argument,
That's right.
that you truly believe in what you're advocating for.
That's exactly. Next, consider the emotional impact of your message pathos. Or the appeal to emotions is a powerful tool, but it must be used responsibly.
Yeah.
Focus on emotions that are relevant to the issue
Okay.
and resonate with your audience's values. Avoid tactics that exploit fear, guilt, or shame.
So it's about connecting with people on a human level,
Yeah.
appealing to their empathy and compassion, not manipulating them.
Exactly. And finally, don't neglect logic and reason.
Right.
Logos is about providing solid evidence and logical arguments to support your claims.
Okay.
Anticipate counter-arguments and address them thoughtfully, showing respect for different viewpoints.
So it's about building a balanced and well-reasoned argument
Yes.
that appeals to both the heart and the mind.
Precisely by combining ethos, pathos, and logos in a thoughtful and ethical way, you can create persuasive messages that inspire action and promote positive change.
Now, all of this makes me wonder about the role of self-awareness.
Yeah.
How can understanding our own biases and tendencies help us navigate this complex landscape of persuasion?
Self-awareness is absolutely crucial both for persuading others
Yeah.
and for recognizing when we're being persuaded.
Okay.
When we understand our own self-schemas,
Right.
the groups we belong to, and our potential biases, we can look at persuasive messages with a more critical eye.
Mm-hmm.
We can ask ourselves, is this information accurate?
Yeah.
Is it aligned with my values? Am I being swayed by emotions or by logic?
So it's about questioning our assumptions.
Yes.
Challenging our own beliefs.
Hmm.
Being open to considering different perspectives, even if they make us uncomfortable.
Exactly. It's about taking ownership of our own thoughts and decisions, not letting ourselves be blindly led by others.
It's empowering to realize that we have more control over our own minds than we might think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The more we understand about how our minds work, the better equipped we are to navigate the world of persuasion
Mm-hmm.
and make choices that align with our true selves.
Okay, so we've been talking about persuasion on a personal level.
Right.
But these principles extend much further, don't they?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, they influence social movements, political discourse, even how we consume information online.
It helps us understand the forces shaping our beliefs and behaviors, not just as individuals, but as a society.
Exactly. Let's start with social movements. They're all about persuasion at their core, right?
Exactly. Social movements are about changing hearts and minds, and they often use the same principles of persuasion we've been discussing.
Right?
Think about successful movements throughout history.
Yeah.
They've all combined powerful storytelling with moral authority and logical arguments to create these compelling narratives that resonate with their audience.
It's like those iconic images and speeches from the civil rights movement.
Yes.
They tapped into people's emotions, their sense of justice, their desire for a better world.
Precisely. And that brings us to political discourse, which is another arena where persuasion takes center stage.
I mean, politics is practically synonymous with persuasion.
It is.
It's all about winning over voters.
Exactly. Political candidates and parties use all sorts of techniques to sway voters. From carefully crafted speeches to targeted advertising campaigns,
Right.
they appeal to our emotions, emphasize shared values, make promises all to connect with us and win our support.
But this is where critical thinking becomes even more important, right?
Absolutely.
We can't just accept these messages at face value.
Right.
We have to be aware of potential biases, fact-check claims,
Yes.
and really analyze the arguments being presented.
Absolutely.
Right.
Informed civic engagement requires a healthy dose of skepticism and critical thinking.
It does.
We need to look beyond the rhetoric, dig deeper into the issues, and form our own informed opinions based on facts and evidence.
Now let's talk about the digital age. I mean, the way we consume information has changed so drastically.
It has.
And persuasion has taken on all these new forms.
It's a whole new landscape with both opportunities and challenges.
Right.
On the one hand, the internet gives us access to an incredible amount of information
It does.
and connects us with people from all over the world. We can engage in these diverse discussions, advocate for causes we care about.
It's like having a global megaphone at our fingertips.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But this easy access to information also presents some real challenges.
Like what?
Well, the sheer volume of content can be overwhelming, making it difficult to separate fact from fiction.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Plus, algorithms often filter our online experiences, potentially reinforcing our existing biases and limiting our exposure to different viewpoints.
It's like we can end up in these echo chambers,
Yes.
surrounded by information that just confirms what we already believe without ever being challenged to think critically.
That's exactly right. And the speed at which information spreads online
Oh my God.
can make it challenging to verify sources and fact-check claims before they go viral.
Right.
This can lead to the rapid spread of misinformation, which can have real-world consequences.
It can.
So how do we navigate this digital world responsibly?
Right.
How can we be more discerning consumers of information when we're just bombarded with messages from all directions? It comes down to being vigilant and developing our critical thinking skills. We need to question sources, evaluate evidence, and be mindful of our own biases.
So before we share that article or retweet that post, we need to pause and ask ourselves,
Yes.
is this information accurate? What's the source? Am I being swayed by emotion or by logic?
Exactly. Being critical thinkers in the digital age
Yeah.
is essential for protecting ourselves from manipulation and making informed decisions.
Okay, so we spent the last two parts of this deep dive, unpacking how our attitudes are formed and how easily they can be influenced.
Right.
It's a little unsettling to realize just how vulnerable we are to manipulation,
Yeah.
especially in a world that's saturated with persuasive messages everywhere we turn.
It is important to be aware of these techniques,
Yeah,
but knowledge is power.
right.
By understanding how manipulation works, we can build up our defenses and make more informed choices.
So in this final part, let's focus on, becoming masters of discernment.
Yeah.
Let's equip ourselves with the tools to spot those sneaky tactics and protect ourselves from being swayed without our full awareness.
Think of it as building a mental shield, against those who might try to exploit our cognitive biases for their own gain.
I like that, a mental shield. Okay, so what are some red flags?
Okay.
What are some telltale signs that someone might be trying to manipulate us?
Well, one common tactic is the overuse of emotional appeals,
Okay.
especially those that play on our fears, our guilt, our insecurities.
Right.
While emotions are a natural part of persuasion, manipulators often try to trigger these intense emotional responses to kind of bypass our rational thinking.
It's like they're trying to hijack our emotions.
Exactly, to get us to act without thinking things through.
What else? What are some other red flags?
Another red flag is the use of misleading or incomplete information.
Okay.
So manipulators often present only one side of the story,
Mm.
cherry-picking facts that support their agenda while ignoring or downplaying evidence that contradicts it.
So they're giving us a carefully edited version of reality.
Exactly, not the full picture.
Yeah.
They're counting on us not digging deeper or seeking out alternative perspectives.
And what about those high pressure tactics?
Oh, yeah.
Like those limited time offers that make you feel like you have to act immediately
Right.
before you miss out.
That's a classic manipulation technique.
Is it really?
Creating a false sense of urgency or scarcity is a really powerful way to get people to make impulsive decisions without thinking things through.
It's like those infomercials that are always yelling, "Call now, operators are standing by. Don't miss out on this incredible deal."
Exactly.
They make you feel like if you don't act right now, you're gonna regret it.
They're playing on our fear of missing out and our desire for instant gratification.
Okay, so those are some red flags to watch out for.
Right.
Now, how do we actually strengthen our mental defenses against manipulation?
Yeah.
How can we become more critical thinkers?
Well, cultivating a healthy skepticism is key.
Okay.
Don't just blindly accept information, especially when it comes from sources you don't know or trust.
Right.
Question assumptions, look for evidence,
Hmm.
be willing to challenge claims that seem too good to be true.
So it's about adopting that trust but verify approach.
Exactly to the information we encounter, especially online.
What else?
Another really crucial skill is learning to identify logical fallacies.
Okay.
These are flawed reasoning patterns that can make arguments seem persuasive, even though they're not logically sound.
Can you give me an example of a common logical fallacy?
Sure, one that we see all the time is the ad hominem attack.
Okay.
This is when someone attacks the person making the argument instead of addressing the argument itself.
Right.
It's a way to discredit someone and distract from the real issue at hand.
It's like saying, don't listen to anything he says, he's wearing a ridiculous hat.
Exactly.
Completely avoids the actual substance of the argument.
It's a distraction technique.
Okay.
Learning to spot logical fallacies is like having a mental toolkit,
Hmm.
for dissecting arguments and separating sound reasoning from empty rhetoric.
I like that, the mental toolkit. Okay, so we've talked about, red flags and logical fallacies.
Right.
But I think we need to talk specifically about becoming more discerning consumers of information online.
Yeah,
I mean, we're bombarded with messages from all directions.
we are.
It's hard to know what to trust.
You're absolutely right. Navigating the digital world requires extra vigilance because anyone can post anything online.
Right.
Regardless of its accuracy or validity, we have to be much more proactive in evaluating the information we're consuming.
So where do we start? How do we sift through all the noise and find reliable information?
First, pay close attention to the source.
Okay.
Is it a reputable news organization, a respected academic institution, a government agency, or is it a website with a clear agenda, an anonymous blog, or a social media account that's known for spreading misinformation?
It's like checking the credentials of a doctor before seeking medical advice.
We want to make sure we're getting our information from trustworthy sources.
That makes sense.
Look for sources that have a track record of accuracy, fairness, and transparency. And be wary of information that comes from sources with a vested interest in promoting a particular viewpoint.
So if I'm reading a website funded by a company that sells vitamins,
Right.
I should be skeptical of their claims about the miraculous health benefits of those vitamins.
Exactly. It's essential to consider the potential for bias and to seek out information from a variety of sources to get a more well-rounded perspective.
What about fact-checking websites?
Oh, yeah.
Are those helpful tools for navigating the online information jungle?
Absolutely. Fact-checking websites like Snopes and PolitiFact play a crucial role in debunking false claims and verifying information.
Okay.
They employ researchers who investigate claims, analyze evidence, and provide ratings for the accuracy of statements made by public figures, politicians, and even viral content,
It's like having a team of digital detectives on our side.
precisely helping us separate fact from fiction.
So beyond those fact-checking websites, are there other things we can do to become more digitally literate?
Well, pay attention to the URL as a website. Sites ending in .gov or .edu are generally more reliable than those ending in .com, .org, or .net. But remember, even reputable websites can make mistakes
Right.
or publish biased content.
Yeah.
So always cross-reference information with multiple sources.
It's about being a critical consumer, not just taking things at face value.
Exactly. And be aware of your own confirmation bias.
Yeah.
We all have a tendency to seek out information that confirms our existing beliefs and to dismiss information that challenges our views.
Right.
This can lead us down these rabbit holes of misinformation, reinforcing our prejudices and preventing us from considering alternative perspectives.
It's like we're building echo chambers around ourselves.
Exactly, shutting out any voices that don't align with our pre-existing beliefs.
So to combat confirmation bias, we need to actively seek out different perspectives.
Yes, make a conscious effort to seek out information from a variety of sources, including those that present different viewpoints than your own ship. Engage in respectful dialogue with people who hold different perspectives. This can help you broaden your understanding, challenge your assumptions, and avoid getting trapped in echo chambers.
It's about being intellectually humble
It is.
and recognizing that we don't have all the answers.
Absolutely. And remember, critical thinking is a journey, not a destination. It's an ongoing process of learning, questioning, and refining our ability to discern truth from falsehood.
It's like building a mental muscle. The more we use it, the stronger it gets.
Precisely by consistently practicing these strategies, we can become more informed, discerning, and resilient consumers of information in our increasingly complex world.
This has been a fascinating deep dive.
It has.
And I think the most empowering takeaway is that we have more agency than we might realize.
We do.
We can choose to be passive recipients of information, just letting ourselves be swayed by whoever has the loudest voice or the slickest marketing campaign.
Right.
Or we can choose to be active, critical thinkers,
Yes.
questioning assumptions, evaluating evidence, forming our own informed opinions.
I completely agree. By understanding the principles of persuasion, recognizing manipulative tactics, and developing our critical thinking skills, we take back control of our own minds and become more discerning navigators of the world around us.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's remember that knowledge is power. The more we understand about how our minds work and the forces that influence us, the more freedom we have to shape our own beliefs, make informed choices, and resist manipulation.
Thanks for joining us on this journey of self-discovery and empowerment.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.